Welcome to the eShopperReviews podcast, episode 18. This is the podcast for September 2022. I'm Jenn and I.
And I'm Jake McNeil.
For those new to this podcast, eShopperReviews is a subreddit on reddit.com where Jake reviews games on the Nintendo Switch platform, and you can find this subreddit at the URL reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. We currently have over 1,900 reviews and counting, and we are supported by your donations on our Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. This month's sponsors are Andy Miller, X Lane, Johannes, Homer Simpson, Ilya Zarev, Eli Goodman, Christopher Wolf, Gabriel Coronado Medina, Francis Obst, and Seth Christianfield. Thank you all for helping to keep the reviews coming. Now on to the patron voted games, which are...
Well, hold on. Before we move on. No. I gotta get some housekeeping out of the way here first.
Oh, housekeeping. Okay.
I'm going to guess, because I'm not certain, you can never tell in print, but I'm going to guess that those names are Francis Obst and Seth Christenfeld. So if either of us mispronounces either of any of these names, I apologize. We're trying, but we aren't ever certain. So this is us giving it a crack. Also, if the sound quality is strange in this particular podcast, know that that is because we are doing one of our little Discord recording it remotely kind of things. So we're doing it a bit differently than we usually do. Just please bear with us, and we'll try to get through this together.
So our patron voted game for this month is Chrono Cross, the Radical Dreamers Edition.
I feel like I already talked about this one a little bit last month.
You did.
Yeah. Suffice it to say, my feelings about the original version of this game are kind of complicated. And I hear that this particular port is... like, it has its ups and downs, so it looks like it's going to be even more complicated. But I guess we'll find out when I review it.
All right, so for next month's vote, we actually have a very interesting few choices, at least in my opinion. We have Splatoon 3, the Dual Field Chronicle. Wait, Dio? No, the Dio Field. Sorry, I read it as Duo. The Dio Field Chronicle. Rift Tracks, the game, 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, and the one I've been hearing a lot about is Cult of the Lamb.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about it lately too, and originally that wasn't going to be in this vote, but I'm like, since it's being talked about, there might be a good number of people kind of wondering about that and maybe wanting to hear my take on it, so I tossed it in there, and we'll see how it goes.
We also have a all-new patron budget game vote.
So I've been racking my brains for a while now, trying to think of something more I can do for the Patreon patrons. And something that's bothered me for a while, I want to make sure that the patrons who donate more have something a little extra. And that's why we have our usual vote, the one where it's technically usually only open to people who donate $5 or more. But for all the $1 patrons, yes, they're recognized in our little opening intro here, and I try to make sure to mention their names in all of the reviews that I do for the month following when they donate. But I wanted to do something a little more. So that was one problem. And then another problem I had is I noticed that there is starting to be a huge backlog of games in the Nintendo Switch library that are $2 or less that never go on sale. And because I make it a point to only buy games when they go on sale or when they get voted in the patron vote, or in the case of super important like first party games, maybe sometimes I'll get those. But because usually I only buy games when they go on sale, these $1 and $2 games that never go on sale, I never end up getting. And I feel like that's not fair to them, those games, first of all. And second of all, this is an opportunity for that I can add an extra vote here where it won't cost me an arm and a leg, but I can still have all the patrons, including those who only donate $1, to speak up and say, hey, I'd prefer to hear about this game or that game. So The following games are all games that have come out in 2022 that are on the eShop for $2 or less. And go ahead, Jen, you can name them off.
So we have Rotund Zero, Organic Engine, Pocket Rockets, Words with Freds, which is interesting, and Boomerang King.
I will say I know absolutely nothing about any of these games.
Same
Just
here.
picked them out of a list because the names of the games seemed vaguely interesting, and I figure maybe it'll make things more interesting if I go in blind. So for anyone who is a patron on Patreon, if you're particularly interested in finding out about one of these games, go ahead and vote for it when I put up the vote. And yeah,
All right, so want to move on to the highlights?
let's do that.
Okay, so eShopperReviews does game reviews, but we don't do them based on like when they release.
Not always, anyway.
Not always. The games that we talk about are the ones that Jake here has reviewed for the month of August. And we'll start with... You know what? Let's start with the hidden gems.
Okay.
We're going to start with the game title that I always mess up. Bug Snack. Snack?
Snacks. Really? You have a problem with the X, is it?
Yeah, I think it's the X.
I swear,
It's
Jen
the
always
X.
is tempted to pronounce this game by everything other than the way it's supposed to be pronounced. I've heard it from Jen pronounced Bug Snash, Bug Snatch, Bug Snack. Like, it's Bug Snacks. Like, snacks that are made out of bugs.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
So this was the patron voted game for the last month. And it's kind of got an interesting story behind, like it was a bit of a cult hit of a sort. And it was kind of a running gag because in the lead up to the PlayStation 5, this one was at least originally advertised as a PlayStation 5 exclusive, and everyone was like, oh, look at the big PlayStation 5 exclusive. The big joke being that this does not look like a graphically mind-blowing game. It looks fine, it looks good, it's cute, but when it got ported to Nintendo Switch, I don't think that they had to really cut too much of the game's visual presentation to get it to work on Switch. I'm sure it still looks better on PlayStation 5, but it's not a game that you get for the graphics. It's a game that you get for the really cute concept and the story. And the game's concept is... It's kind of like mixing a little bit of Pokemon Snap and a little bit of graphic adventure. You're going around trying to catch these little bugs that also look like foods based on the requests of the various denizens of this island. And you're also kind of trying to patch together their little community that has fractured apart. And there's a little story that goes with that, and you start to kind of figure out more of what's going on over time. It's really adorable. I will say it has a few issues. Like, as much as this is like Pokemon Snap, I kind of wanted it to be more like Pokemon Snap. Like, it feels like there could have been a collecting element here that put it more in league with, like, the Pokemon games, and there's not. It's just, you are given a series of tasks and then you perform those tasks. And outside of the tasks, there's not really much reason to go off exploring or doing interesting things or seeing what you can catch because you don't really get credit for it. You have to get the missions first. So I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunity here, but it's still a really adorable game and it was fun.
All right, so the next one for hidden gems is Hyper Jam.
Hyper Jam is not a game that, like, it sounds like a fairly generic name to me, but
It does.
you know,
I agree.
I try to give everything a try, and this one, the basic idea behind the game is there's not really a story, but it does feel like it's in a lived-in world. It's kind of in this cyberpunky kind of setting, and you're just playing one of a series of different interchangeable characters in a kind of arena-based two-stick shooter battle game. And Really fun multiplayer in this game. This is one that I'm going to see about adding to my party game rotation. I think I might have shown you this one, Jen. Do you recall?
Maybe.
This is a one where, like I said, it's kind of a cyberpunky setting, and you're picking up weapons, and each round you have 4 skills, one for each of the characters, and the one who lost first gets to pick the first skill, and then the second person picks
yes. I remember this now.
And I thought that was a really cute way to handle that. It makes it so that each match feels a bit different because you're picking up different skills each time. I thought it was fun. Yeah.
All right. The next one is Elliot Quest.
Elliot Quest is the best point of comparison I can think is this is a really good Legend of Zelda to The Adventure of Link kind of clone. You have kind of a Zelda-style game, but like Zelda 2, all the action is kind of in a side-scrolling, I would say Metroidvania, except for it's not a Metroidvania because all the different areas are separate. And it's fairly simple when it comes to that type of game. Like, I would say if you're looking for a game kind of like that that's really good, you should play Agalos. But Elliot Quest is well worth playing too, even if it's more simple. And kind of has that pixel-based look that's retro and nostalgic, and just overall a good game. Not super inventive, but good.
So the last one for your hidden gems is Never Stop Sneaking.
Never Stop Sneaking.
Yep.
So this one, I think the presentation for this game absolutely knocks it out of the park. This game looks like it's a direct riff on the original Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation. I mean, not the earlier Metal Gear games, but the first one on PlayStation. Complete with low resolution, pixelated, polygonal graphics. And the entire thing is a ridiculous farce. I mean, the opening intro, and I almost hesitate to talk about it because I feel like it's spoiling it a little, but the opening intro has this like 4-star general on an aircraft in front of a bunch of paratroopers, and then the rear of the plane opens up and the general throws his mug out the plane and then dives after it and does this dynamic dive and then lands on the deck of a ship without the aid of a parachute, like looking like a total pro, while still, this kind of older military general, with all the badges and that kind of stuff. Absolutely ridiculous. And the rest of the game follows suit. There's just an absurd story about the villain in this game. They're constantly talking about how he's used a time machine to kidnap all of the presidents, and they always make sure to append onto that even the bad ones.
Wow.
Oh, he's kidnapped all the presidents, even the bad ones. That kind of stuff.
Wow. Okay.
The game itself is what you would get if you took a stealth-based game like Metal Gear Solid and simplified it down to its most core elements, where there's not even a button that you're using. You are just moving your character around, and based on whether or not the enemy sees you, you got to sneak up behind them. If you run into them before they see you, you automatically take them out with your sword. And if they turn around and catch you, if you have a bullet on you, you'll automatically shoot them. Otherwise, you got to skedaddle out of there. It's really fun, a really fast-paced and unique take on the genre. My only real problem with this game was that it starts to feel very repetitive. And a part of that is it feels like you're kind of starting over every time you finish a run, because you complete a goal and then you go back to your base, and kind of the way the game does its progression is that you're building up this base, but then you go back into enemy territory and it's like it re-rolls the same, from the same group of pre-created levels, and you're just playing the same thing over again, which is really disappointing because I feel like the story and the presentation here is so great. The mechanics are good. It's fun. It's fast paced. I just wish it didn't have that repetition so you felt exhausted with it before too long because it's like, oh, I've played this already.
Oh,
But
that's a shame.
otherwise, great game.
All right. So we'll move on to your noteworthy reviews.
All right.
And the one that I really enjoyed playing with you, and I hope we can play it some more, is Kirby's Dream Buffet.
So this one wasn't quite good enough for me to play some of my best games for this month, but I still really enjoyed it. Just watching this game, it's got to put a smile on your face. And
it does.
It's so cute and adorable, but even more than that, I don't know that I've ever seen another video game that portrays food as well as this one does. It all looks so tasty and delicious, and it's creatively used. Like, everything is made out of food, even the enemies. And I was going to bring it up, Jen. We talked about this before. When Jen was playing this game, she kind of giggled, and you said, "You going to say it, or am I going to say it?"
You have to say it. Fine, I'll say it. I was so fat and chunky.
Yes, Jen was the best chonker ever.
The best.
The best, fattest chonker. Because that's the idea of this game.
That is the idea of the game, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's a multiplayer-focused game where you and up to 3 other players are rolling Kirby's down a course, or there are little mini games where you're all kind of competing to get at the berries. And at the end of each game, it basically weighs each of the Kirby's based on how many different berries they ate. And the one that's the fattest is the winner.
I love it. It's $15.
Yeah,
play it with your kids. They'll love it.
It's really inexpensive. It's not terribly deep, but it doesn't really have to be. I think my biggest complaint about this game, and it's a huge frustration for me, this game seems like it would be a perfect party game. But if you want to play it locally with other people, like on the same couch, it only supports 2 players that way. If you want to play it with 4 players, you have to play it either in local wireless or online. And that's just frustrating for me. It's a huge missed opportunity.
I will also say that there are some frame issues when there's a lot of stuff happening on the screen. You'll see it kind of hiccup a little bit. But that's
I did notice a few
critique.
hiccups online,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I mentioned that in the review. It didn't seem like it was a huge prominent issue so much that it ruined it for me. It came up every once in a while, but it's fine. It's not great, but it's certainly not as bad as like Super Mario Maker 2. The online in that was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is somewhat better than that.
Mm-hmm. So the next one you have on your noteworthy reviews, and if it's what I remember, I've almost tripped over all the things that you've used for this game. Skylanders Imaginators.
So let me tell you, people, this is how much I care about you. In doing my Wii U and 3DS game reviews and Nintendo Switch, I wanted to be comprehensive. I wanted to try and play everything that was worthwhile. And I knew that one of those things would have to be all the Toys to Life crap. And it was not cheap. However, the surprising thing is, the most expensive thing out of all of the Toys to... Like, I got every Toys to Life thing on the 3DS, Wii U, and Nintendo Switch. The most expensive thing by far was the Skylanders Imaginators game on Nintendo Switch. This is the most money I have spent on a game for a current generation platform. If you want to buy this game now, and you have to buy it physically, you cannot get it digitally, which is probably part of the reason why it's so expensive. You will be looking to spend over $100 easy. I might have even spent over $120 on this game. It's ridiculous. Was it worth it? No. It's good. It's a very good game. I enjoyed it. I think Skylanders Imaginators, while it got some of the worst reviews in the series, I think that's probably because people were just sick of the Toys to Life formula at that point, and they were done with it. But I honestly think Imaginators is probably the best game that entire genre or that entire type of game has produced. It's very good. It's kind of a action adventure platformer thing. And the Nintendo Switch version of Skylanders Imaginators is unique, very unique in two ways. Number one, it is the only game in the entire Skylanders franchise that is compatible with every single Skylanders figurine, which was going to be the case anyway, because of course the earlier games wouldn't be compatible with the Imaginators. But I'm not just talking about this game in the series. I'm talking about even if you compare it to the PlayStation and Xbox versions, Skylanders Imaginators can still scan in the Donkey Kong and Bowser amiibo figurines that were made for Skylanders Superchargers. And this is the only version of the game that does that. Another thing that this is the only version of this game that it does it is you can scan in the Skylanders figures without the use of one of the little portal devices. It scans directly onto your Nintendo Switch, and once it does, you have to scan it twice for some reason. I don't know why. But once you do that, it saves it to your profile, and you never have to scan it again. And none of the other versions of the game does that. So I would say that Skylanders Imaginators on Nintendo Switch is the best version of the best game in the series. But if you want it, you're going to have to pay through the nose to get it. It is ridiculously expensive. And like I said, I honestly don't feel it's worth it. It's a fun game. I really enjoy it. I think it's very, very good. But it's not $120 plus the cost of figures good.
Not to mention storing all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's another thing, is I've had all these figures hanging. I've tried to keep them roughly out of the way, but I mean, I got a couple of figures for each game just so I can test and try them out and, see the unique features of each game in the series. But when you do that for half a dozen Skylanders games and 4 Disney Infinity games and a Lego Dimensions game, that adds up to a lot of freaking figurines.
It really, you have, I want to say 2 full gallon bags of figurines.
That's probably about right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I had to buy all of these on eBay because for the most part, you can't really get them. Like, you can't get them in stores anymore. You can technically buy them on Amazon, but if you buy them on Amazon, you're going to pay even more for them because they don't produce them anymore. So anyone who still sells them new is going to sell them at an increased price. If you are at all interested in doing the Toys to Life thing, Skylanders is the best series. Like, the Lego Dimensions is a great idea, but I feel like it's poorly executed. The Disney Infinity games, also a really great idea, but the fact that the online has been killed in those games really limits your use of it. Like, that's a large part of what you're doing is you can create your own like little areas and stuff and share them online, except that stuff isn't available anymore. So if you're wanting to see the Toys to Life thing at its best, well, actually, there is one other thing that I haven't mentioned, and that is Starlink, which is also on Nintendo Switch. But I reviewed Starlink years ago, so that's well behind me now. Very, very good game. The Nintendo Switch Star Fox content is outstanding. But beyond that, if you want a really good Toys to Life game, Skylanders is a good way to go, but be aware, if you really want to get Imaginators on the Switch, it's probably not worth the expense. It's just too much money.
Okay. So Actually, I'm quite happy about this. You have only one game for your worst games category, which is Chex Quest HD.
You know, I was looking through all the games on Nintendo Switch that I reviewed this month, and there were some that I wasn't too thrilled with, but none that I felt were so terrible that I felt like they belonged on a worst games list, except Chex Quest HD. So, storytelling time. Chex Quest originally came out, oh geez, I want to say a couple of decades ago. It was a cereal pack-in. You know, like you'd open up a cereal box and there would be a disc you could put in your computer and play Chex Quest. And Chex Quest was a mod of Doom that replaced all the Doom stuff with like Chex, like anthropomorphized, like the cereal.
Wait. This is really about the cereal.
Yes. Oh, yes. It is a licensed.
Oh my goodness.
It is a licensed game based on the cereal, like sanctioned by the cereal company. They were, I guess, approached by the amateur developers who did a mod of Doom and were like, hey, we can make this Chex game. And apparently there was a lot of boardroom design stuff going on to where it's like, oh, you can't do this, that's too violent, and you got to show that, and you can't have this. So it's like your melee weapon in this game is a spoon. Because of course it is.
Wow.
The enemies shoot, what is it? They like shoot green goo at you or something. It's very silly. And the thing is, that's actually probably the best thing about this game is it is so freaking weird, man. It is so strange. And that bizarreness to the game is a part of its charm. But in terms of an actual game, it's just terrible. It is slow paced. The enemy AI is horrendously bad. Your best strategy for the most part is to go up, stab an enemy with your spoon, and walk back a couple steps so that they can't attack you. You know, and then just keep repeating. You're basically walking slowly backward while constantly stabbing your spoon, and that's how you fight most enemies in this game.
Oh my god, that's so ridiculous.
And you kind of have to, because the game is very stingy about providing ammo to the player. Like, you'll run out super quickly. And the other thing is, okay, we're talking about a game that is decades old now. And granted, this is a remade, remastered version of it. But even so, it still looks abysmally bad. And the performance is horrible as well. This is a terrible, terrible game. But I haven't even gotten to the best part or the worst part, which is this. The original copy of Chex Quest, when you got it for free because it came free with the cereal. That's how it worked. It was, you know, you opened the box of cereal and you got a free game. When they did the remade version of it, when they remastered it or whatever you want to call it, it was released on PC for free. The Nintendo Switch version costs $5.
Oh.
So you get to pay for a horrible, horrible game that is also like just a poorly veiled advertisement. Like, not even, like, it's obviously an advertisement. You see checks plastered all over the game. And for the honor of being able to play this game on your Nintendo Switch, you have to pay $5 more than the free that you pay everywhere else. It's awful.
I am so sorry. I have no words.
Oh man, just wait till you see it. It's even worse than you imagine. It's pretty bad.
Okay. So we'll move on to the best games.
Mm-hmm.
The first one you have is Ori the Collection. And is it Ori the Blind Forest Collection?
Yeah, it's the same. It's Ori the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
So I tried to play this game on my computer, the first game, and
This is going into your Jen hates
But
platformers thing.
Yeah, I sucked so much, and I talked to Jake about it, and he was like, "Did you use a keyboard or did you use a controller?" And I went, "Keyboard," and he was like, "That's your problem." So maybe one day I will replay the game. But anyway, go ahead, Jake.
So both this one and the next one that we're going to talk about are kind of cheats because they're collections of games that I've played, the games in the entire collection and reviewed them previously. But it's also worth mention because Ori the Collection comes with, I think I just said, Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And both of these games are magnificent, gorgeous, stunningly beautiful, achingly beautiful Metroidvania games, like some of the best on the Nintendo Switch. They are must-have games, and this is a way that you can get both of these games in physical form on one cartridge. And you're not really saving any money doing it this way, but you're also not spending more money. And for people who prefer to get a physical copy of the game, that's a pretty good deal, because usually you have to pay a bit more to get the physical version, in particular when you have these collections. So if for whatever reason you have not tried the Ori games yet, and you do like platformers, and especially if you like Metroidvania games, like I said, these are absolute must-haves. They are amazing, both of them.
Maybe one day I will try my luck. So next one we have is Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 Digital Bundle.
This is another one where it's kind of a cheat because I reviewed both of these games previously, but I saw that at some point they released a bundle, so I'm like, okay, let me add the bundle to my reviews. And it's kind of easy for me to do that because, well, beyond the fact that I have already reviewed both of these games, like it's easy for me to recommend this because they're both amazing games. If you enjoy spectacle fighter games, games like Devil May Cry or the older God of War titles as an example, the Bayonetta games are arguably the best examples of that you will find anywhere. They are elegant in their design. They're really well crafted. The combat flows so smoothly. It's really well done. I can't say enough good things about it. I will add the caveat that I know that the presentation is somewhat divisive amongst some people. Bayonetta herself, the titular character, is she's a very sexualized character. And I know I've brought this up in a previous stream, so I'm not going to go into it. There's some argument to be had there about the sexual politics of the character, whether she is an example of exploitation or empowerment. And I think there's arguments to be had on both sides there. But suffice it to say, if you're the sort of person who has an issue with sexualized female characters in video games, the Bayonetta games might frustrate you in that regard. But if that doesn't bother you quite so much, if you can get past that, you really should, because these are arguably two of the best games in this genre. They are incredibly good.
Next up is actually one of my personal favorites, the Assassin's Creed Ezio collection.
Really? I didn't know you liked the Assassin's Creed games.
Yes, I did. I played the first Assassin's Creed game with Altair, and then the Assassin's Creed 2, and then Brotherhood. And my fondness of the game pretty much died after that. So, but I have very fond memories of Altair. I have very fond memories of Ezio.
That is interesting. So now I can use this as an excuse to get into like how I got introduced to this series, because my experience with this series has taken a very odd route. So I played the very first Assassin's Creed when it came out, but I only played it very briefly. I played it for a little bit. I thought, this seems good, but it doesn't really capture me. Everybody else is raving about how great it is, and I'm sure it is, but I'm just kind of, it's all right. And I didn't play it for long enough to get really good exposure to it, so I don't feel like I can talk too much about its quality in retrospect, other than to say it didn't capture me. Okay, whatever. Then for the longest time, I did not play any more Assassin's Creed games at all whatsoever. Zoom ahead to the release of Assassin's Creed 3 on the Nintendo Switch, and I got this one to review. And I'm playing through it. I'm like, again, this seems good, but it's not capturing me. I've heard some people say that it was a really disappointing game in the series, but for
It
me,
was, yes.
for
I
me,
played through it and it was kind of disappointing.
for me, it just kind of confirmed maybe this series isn't for me. Okay, whatever, fine. So at this point, I'm like, maybe I'm just not a big fan of Assassin's Creed. Fine, whatever. Then maybe a year or so later, I get a copy of Assassin's Creed, the Rebel Collection to review. And this is the one that has Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Rogue. And so I'm like, okay, I've heard a lot of people talk about Black Flag and they seem to think it's really great, but obviously I'm not a huge Assassin's Creed guy, so I'm not really expecting much from it. And from the moment I started Assassin's Creed 4, it blew me away. It was so good. All of this time, everybody's been talking about Assassin's Creed, and I'm like, I just do not see why people are so keen on this series. And Black Flag, it was night and day. Like instantly, I was like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And the funny thing is that the elements that make it so good are kind of the more piratey elements of the game. Like it nails that theme. It is possibly the best pirate game I've ever played. It is so amazing. And I mean, the Assassin's Creed elements from the earlier games are still there and they're still quite good, but they mesh well with the new stuff. And the way that you can go from being in a city to getting on the ship and then traveling anywhere makes it feel like a much bigger world than anything that came before it. And Assassin's Creed Rogue is pretty much the same thing, but without the piratey theme, which it's still very good, but after Assassin's Creed 4, it's like a step down, kind of. Jen, if you have not yet played Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and you stopped the series before then, and if you really like the earlier Assassin's Creed games, that's the one you really, really, really need to play.
I mean, maybe I will pick it back up again. The whole reason I fell in love with the first 3 games that I played on Assassin's Creed was mainly for the story and the exploration and the making discoveries in terms of story. I know that my love for the game died when they more or less decided to turn it into their franchise, which, it's their property. They can do whatever they want. But I was really hoping that the story at the time was really focusing on the whole, the doomsday that was coming up, the from the Mayan calendar or whatever. And I was really hoping that they would end the story there, but they decided to make Assassin's Creed their franchise. And ever since then, it was very hard for me to fall back in love with it.
That's one of the other things that I think that Assassin's Creed 4 did really, really well, is pretty much every Assassin's Creed fan that I've talked to seems to be in agreement that anything that takes place in the modern day kind of sucks. It's all about the stuff that takes place in the past. That's what's really exciting about the game.
Yes.
And Assassin's Creed 4, it feels like the game is 90% stuff that takes place in the past and maybe 10% in the present. And the stuff that's in the present isn't really connected to all of the other stuff that's been going on. You're playing a completely different new character who I don't even think is named. He's just some random schmo working for the evil company, except, you don't know that it's the evil company, but and they used it as an excuse to dive headfirst into exploring the historical theme of the game. Like I said, this game really lives and breathes this piratey stuff, and it does it so well. You get onto the ship, and as you're going on the ship, your crew will start singing real life sea shanties. And I'm gushing about this game, but this is not the game I'm actually supposed to be talking about right now. We're talking about Assassin's Creed, the Ezio Collection, which includes Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and Assassin's Creed Revelations, I think, is the third one.
So Ezio is probably one of my favorite characters from the Assassin's Creed series. And probably the most memorable one for anybody that's played Assassin's Creed, because he was just so well loved by the
Don't
community.
say that until you've played Assassin's Creed 4. The protagonist in that game, the protagonist in that game is pretty lovable too.
All right.
So I like this one better than I like the first Assassin's Creed. I like it better than 3. I think 3 had pacing issues, and also the port to Nintendo Switch was iffy. I think the Ezio Collection is probably the best port of the Assassin's Creed games to Nintendo Switch to date. I think that the open world elements, in particular the open world elements in Assassin's Creed 2, are really enjoyable. I do like the story. I don't like any of it as much as I like Assassin's Creed 4, but I mean, really, what can compare to... I mean, pretty much everyone has agreed that that's possibly the pinnacle of the series. So it's not entirely fair to keep comparing it to that one going, well, it's not as good as that, it's not as good as that. Okay, it's not as good as that, but it's still really, really good. If you are looking to get into the Assassin's Creed series on Nintendo Switch, I would still say get Assassin's Creed The Rebel Collection first. You don't need to have played any of the other games in the series to understand the plot. It's really pretty well self-contained. However, if you want to get more Assassin's Creed, the Ezio Collection is almost as good. It's still very, very good. So there you go. There is I'm actually talking about that game instead of just using it as an excuse to talk about Assassin's Creed 4 the entire time.
Okay, so your last one for the best games of the month is No More Heroes 3.
Oh, man.
No idea what this game is about.
Oh, my. I'll have to show you some of it sometime. It is a trip. No More Heroes 3 is another spectacle fighter. So it's a lot of fast-paced action where you're fighting a bunch of enemies with a pretty good battle system. But unlike Bayonetta, where it's very elegant and everything flows into each other, I would say No More Heroes 3 is a lot messier and a lot weirder. Your main character is a ridiculous man-child. And I say that despite that this is a genre where you have a lot of man-child protagonists. Like Dante from Devil May Cry is clearly a man-child. But man, Travis Touchdown in No More Heroes 3 is way more of a man-child than Dante has ever been. Like, this is, to give you an idea, Jen, since you are not familiar with this series, these save points in this game are toilet stalls, and you save by going into a toilet, having him pull down his pants and sit down and go, ah. Yeah, it's very juvenile, it's very silly, it's super hyper violent, and a lot of that silly, ridiculous, like not taking itself seriously stuff is a part of the series' charm. It's stupid, but it's endearingly stupid. And the action here is very good. However, even for this series, which is consistently over the top, this one goes well above and beyond being absolutely absurd. And while that's fun and good in its own way, it's also bad in its own way. It's one of the worst elements of this game because there is so much absurdity in the game's story, and the game keeps throwing this absurd story at you, which is fun and silly and weird and dumb. But at the same time, there's so much of it that it drags down the game's pacing. Like, if you want to actually see everything silly the game is throwing at you, you will go for a long while between actually playing the game. You'll spend so much time just watching it and seeing the ridiculous characters being stupid and bizarre, but not actually playing it.
But I mean, you're enjoying yourself, so why not, right?
Yeah. The other element of this game that frustrates me. So the first No More Heroes game took place in kind of an open world where you would go to place within this open city, kind of like, a Grand Theft Auto style city or something like that. And then when you got to where you were going, you would take on the mission and go through a on foot kind of section, like you're going through a building, taking out a bunch of dudes or something. And that was okay, but it was also kind of pointless. Like, there was nothing to do in the open world. It was just a way to get from point A to point B. So why is there even an open world in the game? You're not doing anything in the open world. And in No More Heroes 2, they removed that. Now you're just going automatically to places in the menu. It was snappier. It was more fast-paced. It was a huge improvement. In No More Heroes 3, they brought it back to an open world, but they didn't give you anything new to do in it. So it's like,
Wow.
why would they go back to the way it was in the first game without fixing the problems that had? It doesn't make any sense, but there it is. So I don't know. I kind of feel like, for me, I think I prefer No More Heroes 2 over the third game because it's a bit more streamlined. And while I certainly do still like No More Heroes 3, I feel like it's a step forward in some ways and a step back in other ways. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the performance of this game is pretty awful on Nintendo Switch. And the funny thing is, it is at its worst in those completely unnecessary open world sections. Like, you want to show off this game.
Sad.
Yeah. If they wanted to make this game look and play better, all they needed to do was to cut that crap out of the game. But it is what it is. It's still very fun, still very enjoyable, just definitely has some rough edges.
All right, so the last thing I will announce is that Nintendo Switch's online expansion pack for Nintendo 64 August 2022 includes Wave Race 64.
So I reviewed this one previously on the Wii U Virtual Console, and my opinion on it is pretty much the same as it was then, which is it still plays great. Obviously, it doesn't look fantastic by today's standards, but it's still impressive, some of the gameplay elements that they did with this game, even by today's standards. Like, as you're going through laps in each track, the fact that the wave intensity, the level of the water changes, and that means that each lap around the track can change drastically. And I think that for the limitations of the Nintendo 64 hardware, they did some really cool things to add atmosphere. Like, there's a lake that you're riding around, and when you start, it's covered in fog, and then as you make one or two laps around it, it clears up, and it makes for this really dynamic feel to everything, like everything's taking place in a real world. So yeah, really excellent game. One of the best games that they've added to the expansion pack since it first came out. The Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, rather. Definitely worth playing.
Okay, so now we get to talk about the games that we are looking forward to, because I have a fair few that I am optimistic about and or interested in.
I feel like we've talked about this before a fair amount, haven't we?
I mean, yeah, we have, but I've been, I guess, doing my homework, and there's a few that did not pop up on my radar until like earlier today.
Well, I think we got to get a few of the obvious ones out of the way first. Obviously, the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel, despite that we haven't seen much of it, I feel like it's going to be a must-have when it comes out.
I don't know. I really enjoyed Breath of the Wild, the first game, and I don't want to build up my hopes too much for the sequel.
Okay.
Because I guess I'm concerned that it'll flop.
The other one that's maybe an obvious one for you and me is Harvestella.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that one. I need to look into that again.
That's the one that looks like it's like Square Enix's version of Rune Factory, where you have kind of the farming elements, but you also have some dungeon crawling elements too. Mm-hmm. And it looks really nice, and yeah, I'm really curious to see what they got in store there.
Also looking forward to Splatoon 3, and apparently on the 25th, we're recording this on the 24th, they might have some more info about it.
Yeah, and then the day after that, I believe, or a few days after that, on a Saturday this month, which will be well prior to when the stream is released. Time is confusing when we're recording these, folks. I'm sorry. But they're going to have a Splatfest where players can try out the game ahead of time. And I'm going to try and stream the game some when they do that. So I'll look forward to seeing how the game plays and what's maybe different about it. And yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. I mean, it's one of the games that people can vote for this month. So, hey, maybe I'll get it when people vote for it. I don't know. We'll see.
So
go ahead.
A couple of the games that I saw today that I'm very curious about, despite absolutely sucking at any type of Super Smash Brothers game, Lego Brawls is fairly similar to that. And I kind of want to try it.
Interesting.
Kind of.
I say interesting because when it comes to Smash Brothers style games, the one that everybody is talking about is the Warner Brothers one. What is it? The Inverses or something like that. Which,
yeah.
As far as I'm aware, it is not yet announced for Nintendo Switch. It might not be coming to Switch at all, but I've heard good things about it.
I don't know. Like, it's just... There's a level of cringe for me with the Warner Brothers one because it's with characters that you're like super familiar with, and the Lego series, especially the movies, doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's kind of why I'm looking forward to this game.
Yeah, I will say it's actually kind of surprising in retrospect that for Super Smash Brothers, Nintendo has been able to combine so many very disparate worlds into one game without making them seem strange with each other. Like having Mario and Link and Mega Man and Minecraft
Pikachu.
Steve
Yeah.
and Pikachu all fighting each other in one game doesn't seem bizarre and weird. And I feel like the Nickelodeon one that was released that has SpongeBob and Ninja Turtles, that one, I don't know. It looks, I haven't played it, but it just looks kind of weird. Having Batman fighting Shaggy from Scooby-Doo kind of seems odd.
Oh, I could not. No, that's where the cringe comes in for me. I cannot.
So yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked too closely at the Lego one, but I don't know. It didn't really catch my eye.
From the game footage that I saw today, it looked like there was a lot more customization involved with the characters that you pick.
Oh, that would make sense.
Like in terms of abilities and things of that nature. I think even costumes are also customizable, which I think is a nice touch.
You know what would be really nice is if you could create your own levels in that one. Like, if you're going to go with the Lego theme, you should be able to build your own levels.
That would be really cool.
I mean, technically you can do that in Super Smash Brothers, but I'm not sure if they'd do that in the Lego game. I don't know. We'll see.
So another one that caught my eye, and I won't be speaking too much about it because I honestly don't know too much about the series itself. It's a game from the anime/manga made in Abyss. It's about a group of people that dive into caves to more or less find things to survive in, while also potentially getting killed in the process.
Huh.
Yeah.
I can't say I know much about that one.
Action RPG, and despite like some of the cute artworks that is in it, it's kind of a little bit gory too.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then the other one that I'm actually really looking forward to is called Potion Permit. It's really cute. It has it kind of combines an action RPG, kind of like what you'd find in Stardew Valley or Rune Factory, because you go out spelunking and getting materials and stuff to craft your potions. So it has that action RPG feel to it, but it also has the crafting elements because you have to like play a little game of Tetris or something to make the potions that you need, and you have to diagnose your patient and figure out what's wrong with them. And it's really cute. I really liked how they sort of combined this genre of crafting and action RPG, but still make it kind of cozy.
Okay, I don't really have anything I can say about that one either.
I think you would really like it, Jake. It reminds me of Moonlighter.
Okay.
And then the last, actually, hang on, wait. There's a platformer that I want you to check out.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Moon Scars.
Oh,
and
that's another one I'm not familiar with.
It reminds, the main character kind of reminds me of Sephiroth.
Okay.
Because he has that long white hair, and
is that what interests you about the game? Is that the main character looks like Sephiroth?
No, it did not. But yes, long white hair, big sword that he carries around, and that kind of brooding, I hate everyone nature.
Mm-hmm.
So Moon Scars is, if I remember correctly, about this god that failed as a god and was turned human. And his goal is to find his creator. And it's a platformer, kind of like a Metroidvania. And there goes my dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It's gory. The artwork is kind of like in that horror genre. And I'm unsure as to how difficult it will be, but considering how many platformers you play, Jake, I think this one will be one that you will want to check out.
Okay. Well, let's see. In terms of other games coming up that I'm interested in, I am curious to get my hands on, well, later this month we're going to get the Teenage Mutant, well, I say later this month, but it's kind of later last month when you hear the stream, because I'm going to, time is weird on this. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection, which has a bunch of those classic Ninja Turtles games that I remember enjoying quite a lot. And in terms of other compilations, next year we're going to be getting the Mega Man Battle Network collection, which has a ton of the... I don't even know how to describe it. It's this weird kind of action RPG hybrid type of game where you're using like these randomized cards on spaces, but it gives you... It's so hard to describe, but suffice it to say, it's really fun, really original. In terms of new stuff, I'm curious to see what they do with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Granted, I feel like it's always shooting yourself in the foot to put too much hope on any new Pokemon game at this point, because it's just a recipe for disappointment to try and hype up a new Pokemon game. I feel like they always do something to mess it up.
One more game that I am looking forward to, and I think there's a bit of a pattern for the ones that I'm looking forward to. Cozy. Next one is Lemon Cake, and it's about this character who opens her own bakery and grows her own like ingredients and stuff in her own garden, and it's cute and it's cozy, and I can't wait to try it.
All right. I suppose the other game that I'm kind of curious to see, especially curious to see how it will perform on Nintendo Switch, is No Man's Sky. The kind of massive open world space exploration type game where you can seamlessly go from one planet to another and catalog the different things on it. And, it infamously had a really bad launch where they didn't deliver on any of their promises. But in the time since, it has supposedly become the great game that they were originally promising, and then some. So I look forward to seeing what that results in on Nintendo Switch, especially since, that was a really, really ambitious game, and I kind of wonder how the Nintendo Switch is going to handle that.
Go ahead. I did play No Man's Sky for a little bit. It's been a while. The last time I played it, I would kind of describe it as like a chill vibe. There's nothing too much in terms of adrenaline. If you just kind of want to mindlessly explore and gather things, this is kind of the game for you.
That can be fun. Let's see. Is there anything else that I'm super looking forward to right now? I'm curious to see the remaster of Tactics Ogre that's going to be coming out later this year. That could be good. The Dealfield Chronicle that we mentioned before, I'm kind of curious to see how that will play. It looks really unusual, kind of like strategic elements, but it's all like real time and stuff, I guess. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to play, but it looks like it'll be interesting. Beyond that, I'm not sure that there are any that are really taking up a lot of real estate in my mind right now. I think I'm just kind of taking what comes at me and...
Oh, have we talked about Sonic Frontiers?
No, we haven't talked about it, but I feel like that's in the same situation as Pokemon in the it's best not to keep your hopes too high for a Sonic game because they'll disappoint you every time.
So I will say that what I find interesting about this Sonic game in particular is it seems to have a bit more emphasis on the story, which I've never got the feeling for in any Sonic game whatsoever. It was mostly about like, look at this really cool and awesome like level that we made or whatever.
I don't know. I feel like the times when Sonic has tried to lean more into its story have been some of the worst moments in Sonic. Like on previous consoles, there was a Sonic game, I want to say, I think it was like Sonic Boom, The Rise of Lyric or something like that, where there were genuinely some funny moments in the story, but the story kept cutting into the action so much that you just wanted them to shut up so you could play the stupid game. And
oh yeah, I do remember that. Yes.
It's like Sonic the Hedgehog, even at its best, the story ain't Shakespeare. And you know, it's like, I feel like with Mario games, for example, Mario games might have story. They might have a cute story. It might be a fun story, but those games are never about the story. The story is always incidental to the actual gameplay. And I feel like some of the times that Sonic has been at its worst have been when it's gone well past that to where you are seeing more of the story when you really want to be just playing the stupid game.
That's fair. That's fair. I can't think of anything else to talk about. Can you?
So I did have a couple of theme weeks over the last month. We already talked somewhat about the Toys to Life games. I'm curious, I went on at length about them. What have your experiences with Toys to Life been like?
So I've never played them.
Any of them? No. That's a lie. You have at least played some Toys to Life games because I've seen you scan amiibos into Monster Hunter.
That's pretty much my experience with it.
Okay, but you have used them.
I mean, yes, but I've never gone out and bought like a Skylander game or the Disney version, whatever it was, and played it.
Well, I'm curious. What do you think of the amiibos?
I like the amiibos in particular because they still serve a function in Nintendo games, and they serve another function of just looking pretty, like decorating your desk with it or whatever.
Well, that's what Toys to Life is supposed to be in general.
See, that's not how I saw it. I saw it as a very clever advertising and marketing ploy for parents to just get like annoyed by their children going, Mom, Dad, I want like Mike Wazowski or whatever from Monsters Inc. I just immediately saw it for the gimmick that it was. And unfortunately, Disney's version of Toys to Life games stopped. And I don't know if it's going to come back, but to me, it was just a gimmick to grab at the kids.
So wait, why is that a gimmick, but Nintendo doing it isn't?
Because Nintendo still continues to support it. Like your amiibos. Like I can still use amiibos from years and years ago to get stuff from Monster Hunter.
But they're very inconsistent about it. Like for Kirby's Dream Buffet, you can't use the amiibos in Kirby's Dream Buffet for anything. You know, even if you have a Kirby amiibo.
That's fair. I feel like if they're going to use the amiibos, I think they would do it in their like big name games. But again, you have far more experience with the amiibos and Nintendo than I do.
Yeah, that's true.
I just don't like... Okay, I like the idea of like, oh, this toy that I have can also like play with me in this video game. I get it. But I'm an adult and I'm jaded. And I just see it as a ploy to get more money from the kids.
Okay. And the other theme week that I had this month, in fact, as we post this review, it'll be just wrapping up, is... Or no. The one that we're just wrapping up is the Toys to Life one. But prior to that was I think I called it my Spies, Assassins, and Vigilantes week. And a lot of these games make use of stealth. And I'm curious because I feel like this is a pretty divisive issue for a lot of gamers. What is your take on stealth in video games?
Okay, give me just a moment while I look up what I would consider a stealth game. Or at least the ones that I've played. Give me just a moment. Okay, so we've talked about it before, Assassin's Creed.
Right.
It's the whole, like, you're trying not to be seen by the person you're trying to capture. You're also trying not to be seen by the guards that are, obviously a part of the level. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of any other stealth games I've played, and I feel like I have some, but it's not...
So
it's not popping up.
Some of the most prominent examples of stealth games are the Metal Gear series, the Splinter Cell series. Let's see what else. The Batman Arkham series. That was another one that I reviewed some of them this month. In some of the Deus Ex games, you can play them stealthy. Well, I say all of the Deus Ex games, I believe you generally have that option. I mean, technically, in a lot of games that aren't technically stealth games, they can still have stealth elements. Like, even in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you can sneak up on enemies.
Right. See, it's even saying that Stray, that really cute game about the cat, is a stealth game.
I have not yet played that one. I've heard good things.
I have not yet played that either. But, I think a lot of games have stealth elements to them, but for me to call it a stealth game, it has to be the main feature, the whole blending in with your surroundings, not being seen, all that stuff. Thief, I think, is another good example.
Oh, yes, that is a perfect example. You're correct. And by that right, also the games that Thief kind of inspired, the Dishonored series. That's another good one.
Yes, I was about to bring in Dishonored. And apparently the Hitman series is another stealth game.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
But I feel like I would probably enjoy a game like that fairly well. It's just doesn't seem to be something a lot of people make or gravitate to.
I think that some people love it and some people hate it. But one of the reasons why a lot of people hate it is when it's done poorly. Like... You have a game like Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. Was mostly not a stealth game. But in some sections, you had these stealth sections where you needed to sneak past enemies. And if you got caught even once, it was an automatic fail and you have to restart the entire section all over again. And that's just frustrating. It's not fun. And it doesn't play like the rest of the game. So you're like, why did they put this here? They just wanted to kill the fun at this point in the game.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I've heard it said that stealth gameplay at its best makes every part of the stealth cycle, so to speak, fun. Where it's fun to be sneaking around. It's fun to actually jump on an opportunity to take out an enemy or something while you're sneaking around. And when you get caught, it's fun to scamper around and try to get back into hiding again. And when a stealth game isn't good, it's because it fails one of these things usually. Either it makes it tedious to try and sneak around, it makes it frustrating when you get caught, or it doesn't give you enough options to take out enemies while you're sneaking around.
No, that's pretty fair. I would agree to all of that.
Like, I think one of the games that did this really the best was the Batman Arkham series, where a lot of people talk about these games like, it made me feel like I was Batman. I feel like this game, like, this is how it feels to be Batman. And a lot of people make fun of that because it's like, oh, what, did the game kill your parents?
Oh my gosh.
But the thing is obviously that's not what people mean when they say that. It's more about the way this game uses stealth to make you feel like you are a predator stalking his prey from the shadows, where you are going from sneak point to sneak point effortlessly, fluidly, and taking advantage of every opportunity you can get to pick off enemies one by one. And just this feeling of freedom, of I can slink from one shadow into another with ease, and I can find the opportunities where I can get them to pick off enemies. That's a great feeling. So it's got the moving under, while you're in stealth thing, it's got that down. And then when it comes time to take out an enemy, it's just as simple as I've got them where I want them, and now I'm taking them out. And you get this fun little animation where Batman will zip down on a zip line and string up the enemy, and he'll be dangling from a ledge up above and scream, "Ah, help me, you got me," that kind of stuff. Really satisfying. And then if you're clumsy and get caught and the enemies see you, it makes it fun to scamper away or to try and fight them off, depending on how brave you're feeling at that given time. If the enemies see you, then you need to think about, okay, where can I go where I can break their line of sight? Or maybe I can just zip around fast enough that they'll lose track of me. And it makes the chase all the more enjoyable, because it's like, okay, I need to get back to where I can be safe again, and then I can get back to my stalking. But you don't feel like, oh, the fun has just automatically died because they spotted me. And not enough games make every part of that cycle as enjoyable as the Batman Arkham games do. It was really, really good.
All right, so that wraps things up for this month's eShopper Reviews podcast. Again, we want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon for contributing. Patreon donors are the first ones to gain access to these podcasts, and if you are interested in becoming a donor, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. And once again, if you're curious to read any of the reviews or content mentioned in this podcast, you can find it on the eShopper Reviews subreddit at reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. Once again, this has been Jen Ip
and Jake McNeil.
We'll see you next month, and in the meantime, we both hope you found this content helpful and enjoyed some good games. Catch you all next time.
Later.